Well, like tomorrow. It's very busy. You need anything tomorrow? Oh, my.
Morning just for the bigger take. That was part of my station. Person.
Oh, if I knew that, I would announce it tonight to everybody. Good evening, everyone. It's 7:06, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Old Saybrook Board of Education to order. We will start by doing the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, and one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The first thing on our agenda tonight, I'm going to read a Teacher Appreciation Week proclamation. On behalf of the Old Saybrook Board of Education and the Old Saybrook Public Schools District, I would like to recognize Monday, May 8th, 2023 through Friday, May 12th, 2023 as National Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers are the backbone of educational success. It is through their tremendous efforts that our students continue to succeed and reach new academic heights. Our teachers dedicate themselves not only to the education of their students, but also to the concept of creating lifelong learners. It is through their passion for learning that they inspire their students to develop that same passion. In addition to traditionally held responsibilities, our teachers serve as role models, mentors, and counselors to the youth of our community. Their influence over our children strengthens our district, future of our town, and the future of our nation. On this day, Tuesday, April 25th, 2023, the Old Saybrook Board of Education formally commends the teachers employed by our district. Trevor Nichols, Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the correspondence. Karen's not here this evening, so we have thank you letter from Mr. David S. Plotkin that I'll pass around. Also, we have the board members. A thank you for the trip, the BC trip that we're going to pass around too. And also the K Journal on the board. Next item on our agenda are reports from our Student Board of Education representatives.
All right, so we've had a bit going on since we last spoke. To start, the student government, or this kind of new club, is bringing a proposal to our super group, and they're looking to expand the high school voices included in our leadership. They want to replace our student council, which has kind of taken a backseat following COVID, and they want to bring up on a system of advisory group representatives and mock senators, much like our legislative system runs. This allows for more people to be included in student leadership rather than just a select few. And so, well, with this, not with this, but the Club's volleyball tournament that happened a few weeks ago. That was on a Friday night. That was a success. 6 teams signed up. Unfortunately, my team came in second place. We were running a 4 people against 6 people team. So that was a tough defeat, but it was a lot of fun. The yearbook club has finalized the yearbook for the 2022-2023 school year, and that of which will be available to purchase soon. The math team qualified for nationals. They had a state competition this past weekend, and all 3 members qualified, so that was cool. AP tests are right around the corner. Those will be taking place the first 2 weeks of May, so students are getting ready for those. I know in both my AP classes, we've been going on about a couple weeks now of review, schedule review, and we're taking practice AP tests soon. The Chamber Singer trip to New York was this past weekend. They hosted a concert on Thursday night before leaving on Friday morning, and a couple of my friends went. They said it was a really fun time. they saw it play while they were there, and yeah, they said that it was a really good experience. On May 6th, the jazz band is hosting an event at the Mural by the Cape, featuring special guests and helper to the mural, Rafael Blanca. On May 10th is the Band and Chorus 1 concert, and May 18th is the Band and Chorus 2 traditional rose concert, where at the end of the concert, roses are handed out to each of the seniors, much like sports teams do on senior night, where they can go into the audience and give those to their parents. So I think that's gonna be a pretty cool event. May 24th is the Memorial Day Parade, where our marching band will be walking down the Main Street here, so look out for that. And Mrs. Peruccio has been conducting her senior exit interviews at the high school, and from what I've heard, many students have been very grateful for this opportunity to feel like they are included in what goes on, in the board. For sports, OSW softball, this is their first year running, Old Civic and Westbrook, their combined team. They've had a difficult season up to this point. According to Max Preps, which is the Connecticut sports site, they're 0-4, although I do believe they won their first game. I don't know if that was recorded or not. They play Cromwell and Old Lyme next. Baseball carries a 4-4 record, now 5-4. They played Morgan, came early to win at home on Monday. And they play Cromwell tomorrow. Boys lacrosse sits at 3-2, with games against Cromwell and Old Lyme in the coming week. So that's this week. Girls lacrosse is off to a pretty strong start. They have a 5-2 record, and their only 2 losses have been by a margin of 1 goal. Actually, I think that's 6-2 as of today. I was at practice and I saw they were beating their opponents by a marginal amount. I think it was upwards of 15 to 20 goals, so that was pretty cool. Sophomore Gretchen Kulecki scored her 100th goal of her high school career against Fitch last week, so that's definitely a notable performance. Girls lacrosse plays Ledyard and Cromwell next. For track and field, Old Saybrook hosted Valley Regional and Lima Lyme this past Wednesday, where many Old Saybrook athletes hit personal records and qualified for shorelines and states. Our Old Saybrook girls team took first place and won that meet. A notable performance was seen with Avery Rickards' 12.2 100 meter dash, qualifying her for outdoor track nationals. And track and field has another meet on Old Lyme, at Old Lyme this past Friday and Saturday. And that's it. Any questions?
Great, thank you.
Question, could you tell me a little bit more about the new proposal, and how students get involved in that new proposal that you're presenting to this commission?
So, so like I said, it's fairly new, but I'm part of the super group, being a board representative, where we meet, is it 2 times a month?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just a group of accepted individuals who talk about the events going on and meet with the super chair here. Our last meeting, we had Mr. Fletcher join us. So they're a good group of students. And I don't know much about the proposal just because it is so new. But I believe it's ran by one of our social studies teachers, Mrs. Story. She has a youth government group, and they've actually been to the Capitol to participate in youth government. They want to meet with the super group to discuss a rework of how student leadership is run in high school. And like I said, I feel like that's still very new, so there's not a whole lot of information, but once that does, I know that is coming pretty soon, so.
Thanks again. Anybody would be interested in joining?
I've heard that, at least from the super members, I've heard that they're all supportive of this idea. Unfortunately, being seniors, it probably wouldn't take place until next year. But it's all positive, so we're here.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions for our board reps? this evening? Thank you, John Elliott. Appreciate that. Trent, I'll leave the citizens. We were just online tonight. Okay. That's that. This item on our agenda is our consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. So second by. Great. All in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So moved. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, we have our 8th grade leadership presentation.
All right, we're up. We are fast. Stand up there. All right, so I'd like to welcome you all to our presentation on leadership at the Old Saybrook Middle School. It's a newly formed group this year. And we hope after you see our presentation, you are as excited and proud of the accomplishments and the work that have been done this year as we are. My name is Matt Walden. I'm the associate principal at Old Saybrook Middle School, and I am here with an absolute all-star team of eighth graders who are going to introduce themselves to you, and we'll get our presentation started.
Hello, my name is Gordon. I'm Lily. I'm Sylvia Glover. I'm Elizabeth Novello. Alexa. I'm Camelia, and I'm Hannah.
All right, so now that you've met us, let's tell you all a little bit about our group and our work that we've done this year. Mr. Gerbers. Right. So we're really excited to have an opportunity to get this group formed and together to start doing some really meaningful work at the Old Saybrook Middle School. We have been noticing that children at even some of the higher levels of middle school, 7th and 8th grade, lack those fundamental leadership skills and abilities across many levels. We have data that have been collected, and we saw a real raise in uptick in the behavioral issues we are seeing in our school. And we said, we need to do something about that. We need to take some action, and perhaps this leadership route might be something we can do to control or combat some of the behavioral issues that we were seeing. So that formed our theory of action. And our idea was basically if we could give our 8th grade opportunities to do some things and have opportunities, experiences, have some practice with, role model, and get out there and do those leadership type of skills, then we would see an increase in positive behaviors throughout our school. We decided on some key competencies. So the staff and the children together said, what are really those look fors that we want our group to be focused on? So we started looking at what it's like to be a leader, avoiding peer pressures, being a positive influencer, having empathy for others, being adaptable, and communicating effectively. Our favorite slide of all time is our connection to our strategic plan. Well, you will notice that our key competencies really align nicely because in each area, there's a real nice distribution in all. So all 3 sections of our strategic plan, equity, high quality instruction, safe and supportive environment, fall really nicely into those key competencies that we were looking at for our students in this leadership group.
So in order to get into the leadership group, we had to apply for it and teachers had to recommend us for it. And we also had to agree to abide by the rules of the contract about responsibilities that we had.
So far, our current progress is there are 27 members, or about a third of our grade, and it has had a highly positive impact on behavioral issues and behavior in our grade. We identify ways in which to carry ourselves like leaders, including how to address others in a formal manner, speak with confidence, look people in the eye, and shake hands firmly.
One of the first trips we took was to the Old Saybrook High School to meet with student leaders and administrators. And we learned how they would carry out leadership actions, and in the process, we became familiar with the high school.
We took another trip to Penny Lane Pub. We met with the business owner, restaurant owner, Alex Folks. Mr. Folks talked to us about what it's like running a small business, but he also gave us advice about how to separate ourselves from the pack and apply for a job. In November, we represented grade 8 at the Veterans Day event. Myself and Alexa and another one of our peers spoke at the event. We had a small group meeting with an FBI agent who was on the scene for the rest of the Boston Marathon bombers. He spoke to us about his experience attending Cambridge University, being recruited by the FBI and becoming a leader in the FBI. We learn the importance of representing ourselves in the more formal way when communicating through email with teachers and advisors. Instead of saying hey or yo, we learned how the importance of beginning an email with hello, Mr. and Mrs.
We also took a visit to Wesleyan University, and we had the opportunity to tour the campus, meet with student athletes, and addressed by head men's basketball coach Joe Riley. And then afterwards, we had lunch at school.
We were taught how to write formal business letters, and some of us wrote thank you letters to the Wesleyan students and staff.
In February, we had a group breakfast at Racina's, and there we used our skills, like, for example, communicating with the staff, calculating our meals costs and tip costs, and conducting ourselves with class.
During our visit to Penny Lane Pub, the Penny Lane Pub owner, Alex Koch, told us that when he posts an entry-level job, usually about 30 people apply. However, only about 10% of those people submit a resume. Since this is a great way to gain an advantage over other applicants, all of us developed our own resume.
Many of us served as student representatives during 2 visits by the Connecticut Association of Schools.
And last month, we were invited on a tour of Connecticut Superior Court in Middletown. While there, we were addressed by State Prosecutor Christopher Paraculis and by State Attorney Michael Gaylor. We also sat in on an arraignment hearing. Being in the leadership group has given us an opportunity to hear about how 21st century skills are utilized in the real world. It also gave us an opportunity to practice those skills, especially skills of initiative and entrepreneurship and communication.
So this slide really speaks to what we were talking about at the beginning, that if we learn leadership skills and we become leaders, we start to take on responsibilities that maybe we wouldn't have had in the school before. We partner with our staff, we partner with our peers, and we really look for what's right. So this graph represents that our behavioral issues, same time last year, are down 50%. And those that have repeated with 6 behavioral referrals or more are only at 3%. So our work is working.
This has been an amazing first year for the leadership group. The leadership group gave us so many opportunities and gave us the chance to lead within our school. We plan on utilizing the skills we have learned as we apply for jobs and enter the workforce, serve on leadership committees in the high school, and act as agents of positive change in our society. All these skills and opportunities will help us in high school, college, and life.
Any closing comments from anybody?
But that is a very great opportunity, and we do a lot of things that will help.
I told you I had the 18 with me. We've seen this work. We've seen these students take on responsibilities, have a voice. We talk about that often. A lot of towns that I go out to and visit, as an educational leader, they say and tout how wonderful those schools are because they give their children such voice and such choice in their learning. But as you can see here, we actually do. And we understand that students, when put in positions of saying, you know, what's right and how do we lead our school, they truly can make a difference. And I think that's what we've learned as a staff, that we've really worked hard with our students to say, how do we make Old Saybrook Middle School a better place? And I think we have. Thank you.
Mr. Walton, I want to thank the leadership group for middle school for this presentation tonight. Board member, if you have any questions?
I do, for a quick question. Thank you very much. I think it's, first of all, congratulations to the students that are here and to the entire group. It's an amazing experience and you are learning life skills, as you said, that you will use forever. So yes, email is different from text. But I'm curious about can you share any examples how this contributed to a 50% reduction in the behavior issues?
You want to start or you want me to go? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think teachers might think? Yeah,
Well, like, Alexis said, we had to, sign a contract at the beginning of the year, and we have to like follow that rule, those rules, like, we have to be like so respectful, and if we don't, there's actually like a halfway mark that, if we didn't do those things, then we would like not be able to do it, so it's really like, you have to keep up your behavioral, yeah,
It's gotta be.
yes.
And have you been able to influence the other kids? I mean, right, you represent 30% of the grade, which is awesome, because I was wondering, what the proportion was, but have you been able to influence those other kids that aren't in the leadership group?
Definitely, yes.
I feel like, some of the kids like, not like look up to us, but like see that we're in this and like that we are leaders, that we have grown to be leaders. I miss my chance, I miss my opportunity, I want to still be like that.
Well, first I want to thank everyone on the leadership group for such a great presentation. And it's really impressive, the diversity of experiences that you all went to. So I'm curious, from a student's perspective, what was favorite and that was most interesting to you, a place that you visited, and tell me why. Tell us why.
Well, what I liked is, oh my gosh, going to the Superior Court. Yeah, and like that, like, I thought I was going to want to be like a doctor or something like that when I grew up, but actually like we're in a court, room. Yeah, and, like, I was so interested in it, and now I'm like thinking of, maybe I want to do that in my career, like, so many opportunities.
Anyone else? That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
I really like Wesleyan, because college is 4 years away for us, and like that's pretty close, and we all get to see what it will be like if some of us go to college.
Thank you. Great work.
Yeah, question for you. I would probably just iterate that great presentation, great opportunities. My question is, how can, beside the other students looking up to you, how do you get an opportunity to share these experiences with the other 8th graders so that they might be interested, or maybe 7th graders, so they're interested in the future of doing things like this? How do they find out about it?
Well, we have like a homework page, and Mr. Carroll kept coming around and telling us about it. And
you introduce at assemblies.
yeah.
You're kind of a face to the school in that respect, right?
Do other students get to learn about what these students have experienced? I mean, I think it's wonderful. I'm just curious now, the other students might want to be like, oh, I would like
Yeah, when
to.
we have school-wide assemblies, they're the ones that come out and they'll actually introduce the guest speaker, and they'll give the history about, why they're there and the background on that. And they'll also talk about their work that they've done. So they meet twice a month, usually, right? And have meetings about the work that they're going to do in the school, and then opportunities they're going to try to avail themselves outside of our building.
Thanks.
Kelly?
So first of all, again, congratulations, the fact that you're up there and presenting so clearly and with such confidence at your age in front of a group of people that you don't know is a really great testament to the fact that you guys are building this skills. So really, really well done first. The second piece is you guys are the first ones to ever go through this, right? So is there, and it's all about voice and empowerment. So is there anything that you would want to change about the program?
I mean, like, I don't know, like maybe going to like local businesses around town and seeing what they do. I really just can't find anything like bad about it, but I really think this is just like, well, we're using our voice right now.
Yes. I would probably say more like in school opportunities.
To grow that, yeah.
Wish we communicated more with other groups in the school, like other kind of government groups in the school, so we could communicate and see what we can kind of combine or learn from each other and things like that. I thought that it was like a really good experience. I think maybe going to like more businesses. So we like, I don't know, it was really cool going to like businesses and like this peer court and like the colleges. So like maybe more of that. I don't know. It was really cool. More of what we're doing now, I guess. That was
Well, thank you again.
Right, thank you.
Welcome tonight.
Get cookies.
Oh, was that everybody?
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Good night. Good night. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a presentation on 21st century skills this evening.
Yep, and so Jeremy Taylor is going to conduct this presentation, and Dave Foxing represents administration at ISO.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Jeremy Taylor, and part of my job is I'm the coordinator for 21st Century Skills Instruction at Old Saybrook High School. And I'm back again this year to give the board an update in our progress in this project. So some of this material hopefully is familiar to everybody, and I'll tell you what's different since last year. Oh, camera's back. Good. So our goal here, this is a recap, is to prepare students not only in their academic content fields that they're studying, but across all curricular areas to help them to develop these 7 skills, which we've been calling 21st century skills, also called workplace survival skills, or survival skills for the 21st century. And there they are. It's wonderful to see them mentioned in the previous presentation. I'm glad they're starting to be everywhere. Connection to our strategic plan is perhaps most clear in the second of our 3 goals, where we're hoping for students to develop opportunities for application skills and knowledge aligned to the vision of a learner. Well, these are 7 very important skills, which we are attempting to instruct them. And there are connections to other goals as well, but that instruction certainly will feed into the well-being of our students as they go forward. And on an equity basis, these are not skills which are targeted solely at our college-bound students, but will be useful for everybody as they leave high school and go out into the world. And our building goals, so the next slide, I believe, specifically mention work that we are doing in the 21st century skills in goal number 2. We will continue the work of embedding instruction and assessment into curriculum in all departments, and grading and assessment of those skills is also mentioned, but also the students using data to set goals for themselves and also to adopt their own sense of leadership and ownership of learning. So the data that we're providing students hopefully will help them as they move forward into their capstone projects, and more about that later. Review of the work that we've been doing so far. This is a long-term project. I know the board adopted this particular set of 21st century skills. There are others, but this is ours. We like this one. Last year, I think since I was here last, the biggest project that we undertook was the revision of 21st century rubrics, 21st century skill rubrics last summer. It was a group of 10, 12 teachers and administrators in this room. Mr. Walton was there. And it was a major effort, but I am proud of the work that we did. I think that what we came out of that with are a set of tools that our teachers find useful and our students find comprehensive. So this year, we had 3 goals for work at the high school. And the first was, as I mentioned, student ownership of learning through the implementation of learning targets. The second was a revamp of how we were communicating student achievement data, how it was being stored and how it was being communicated out to students and parents. And third was we wanted to make a connection between those 21st century skill work, the work that the kids are doing, the assessment that we were doing of their work, and life after high school. These numbers don't go anywhere. They don't feed anything. If they're not useful to our students, then ultimately they're not going to be, as important as we feel that they need to be for the development of our kids as they move into the future. So, first step, student ownership of learning, and I'll pass off to Mr. Plotkin here. This tool of using learning targets to transfer ownership of what's happening in the classroom to the kids.
So we recognize that in order to increase student ownership of learning, our students needed to be able to understand where we expected them to go, where are they currently, and how are they going to get from that point to the next point. One strategy to accomplish that is through the use of learning targets. So we provide professional development for our teachers about two different types of learning targets: overarching, big picture, and then day-to-day, what is expected. And we did that through the lens of not just content standards, but also 21st century skills, so that our students were receiving direct instruction about the very specific expectations of the 21st century skills, and not just the broad language of them, like initiative. What does that really mean? And how do we break that down so our students can understand what it looks like to take initiative? So an example of that process is an example that here, maybe you use this in video class.
Yeah, I read this slide.
So the overarching learning target, the big picture, what is expected at the end of the unit is that students can perform Eric Whitaker's Ghost Train in public Thursday, May 18th at 7:30 p.m. So very authentic.
Shameless.
Right.
Not gonna work that in.
So the initiative and entrepreneurship piece in that broad statement is not directly obvious. And for students to say, what do I need to do in order to get to that point? Months now, maybe from where we are currently, it turns into a process of creating daily learning targets that guide them on their way there, that directly address the expectations of initiative and entrepreneurship. So that sounds like, for example, on one day, they might be working on setting a goal for improving the ability to play my part today and monitor progress towards that. And then in the middle there, you have the different levels of mastery that are incorporated with initiative and entrepreneurship that we are driving our students towards reaching.
I include this one purposefully because the name of that skill has been difficult for us, because entrepreneurship, depending on your background, that's very concrete. The sense of that word in the 21st century skill context is really just, don't just do what you're told. Entrepreneurship means you create your own opportunities. You create something where nothing was there before and nobody told you to do it. It encapsulates student ownership of learning. Our second goal was to improve communication of student data. And what we did was we tried to use the tools that were available to us. Last year's data collection and reporting was based on our application of the middle school's model, which didn't map perfectly well onto the high school because we're not organized the same. We don't have grade level teams. In response to feedback from students and feedback from parents, we moved to recording and reporting 21st century skills data within PowerSchool, which is the student information technology platform that we already have in place for our traditional grades. And what that has allowed our students to see is, I have granularity up there. I got to explain that. It is now possible for a student to look within PowerSchool, to look at the online interface. And when there's a 21st century skill assessment, they can see exactly which assignment it was derived from. And that wasn't possible in the old model. It was more holistic. And that's an advantage too. But in this case, our students were telling me, look, I don't know exactly where this number came from. I want to understand what project I did, where was I assessed, where this number comes from, so I can understand my performance in that context. And this gives us that ability. On the right, I blacked out one of my favorite students' names, but this is an example of the second page of a report card. And we're sending these out. Last year it was per semester. This year it's quarterly, as a second page of the report card. And you can see which 21st century skills were assessed in each of her classes and how she was doing in all of those. My favorite slide tonight. There's a learning curve on this because Power School is not as friendly in terms of large zoomed out perspective data analysis. It's not as friendly, but I'm starting to get the hang of it and starting to generate some of these graphs of data, which is now available. Now that the data is in Power School. I did this one. I thought, wow, this is interesting. And I thought I would show it to you. What this is the percentage of students scoring a 3 or a 4 in critical thinking and problem solving. And the 4 grades, grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 are represented as different lines. And you can see their achievement from academic period to period, quarter to quarter. It's not at all what I was expecting. But now that we have this data, it allows us to ask the next question. It allows us to look at this performance, and I have lots of questions I could ask here, and I'm sure the board is going to ask me, well, why is there a dip in the second quarter? And I'm happy to report, I don't know, but man, isn't that interesting? And we can now start to form and test hypotheses on how our students are doing in regards to 21st century skills using this data, which is now available to us as fact. So we weren't there last year, we're here now, and hopefully with this, the data analysis tools that we're working on developing as an instructional leadership team, we can start to engage with these numbers in ways that impact instruction. Okay, this last of our 3 goals, connecting 21st century skills to life after graduation, is still in process. We have a pilot group right now, which is going to be small this year, maybe 5 or 6 kids that will have this tool given to them. Many schools over the past, 5 or 6 years have experimented or aspired to include a transcript, a portfolio component to the students' transcripts when they're applying to college or to employment after high school. Idea being that somebody with a portfolio to submit is more 3-dimensional than someone who is being represented purely with grades and numbers. And also it's more directly applicable to a kid who is maybe trying to get a job as a welder. You know, if they have examples of work that they have done, then it's on the resume. It can be represented electronically, and then that's a more useful document for them. So we've tried to connect both with the world of employment and with colleges. I've spoken to college admissions people. Kristen Hunter has been calling up college admissions people all over Connecticut, asking them if there was a portfolio component to the kid's transcript, would you read it? And what impact would that have on your admissions decision? And some of them have said yes, some of them have said no, some of them said, I actually don't know. If it showed up, we would have to decide. And colleges are all different, but what's becoming more and more common is a field in a college application for supplemental information. What else is there in your application that you would like to tell us that you haven't had an opportunity to tell us? That's becoming more and more common. And what we see is an opportunity to use our capstone program to give every kid something to put there, which would advantage Old Saybrook students, because I know that we have extraordinary students who already have plenty to put in that place. But what if everybody did? And I've had college admissions people say to me, we discount that, or we're not that interested in it because it's very hard to, it's hard to assess it. It's hard to know if any of those materials, supplemental materials coming in are extraordinary. Are they really impressive? Are they not that impressive? So there needs to be sort of standardization of it so that they can decipher it. Well, if our 21st century skills are the point or a target of the capstone process, and we use the kids' 21st century skills achievement on their capstone project as a framework to present it, then it becomes much more understandable from an admissions officer's point of view. So there's another component here, which is the school profile document, which is prepared by our guidance faculty. And it is every August, I think they do it, and it accompanies each one of the kids' applications. And it describes our school. Here's how many kids are in the senior class. Here's our average GPA. Here's, like, how does this kid stack up against all the other kids? If we could include information about 21st century skills in that school profile document, then it could allow our exceptional folks to substantiate how exceptional they are. And our kids who are exceptional vis-a-vis 21st century skills are sometimes not the same kids who are exceptional in the traditional grades. So it allows us to represent our range, or it expands the range of achievement that we can brag about, the kids can brag about. This is underway, and there are a lot of challenges because it needs to fit in a number of different, it needs to be received in a number of different circumstances in different ways. So creating something with the broadest possible application is what we're working on. All right. Challenges for next year, I would say calibration. All of our teachers need to be equally familiar with these rubrics, with these skills, and we all need to have the same standards for applying them. And that's gonna, I think, as we get new faculty on board, never gonna go away, really. We're just gonna have to keep working on that over time. And the second is authentically integrating 21st century skills instruction. Where does our curriculum naturally lend itself to instruction in 21st century skills? And with ILT, with Dr. Fletcher's direction, has already begun that work at the end of this year. And successes is the next one. We have done a lot of work on this year. Learning targets are in place. Kids see them all the time. That PowerSchool system is working sufficiently well that I have not had, I haven't had anybody say, can we go back to the old way? Has not happened. So I'm going to take that as an indicator of success. And this capstone portfolio pilot group is underway, and hopefully that'll help some kids next year when they're applying. One more. Yes. Professional development is, we're going to need to keep working on it, and we want to get this capstone thing to be to reach maturity so that it is valued by the kids, not just as a hurdle to graduation, but as a stepping stone to get them to the next place they want to go. I think that's my last slide, Trent.
It's like it.
Okay. Love to take any questions.
Great presentation. Remember some questions. Marina?
I do. I love what you're saying about the capstone project, because not all capstones are created equal, and it is nice to know that there's an effort afoot for them to bring it forward as a potential differentiator for a college acceptance, because they do put a lot of hard work into them. So I think that's awesome. So good luck with that. You can change the face of college acceptances.
Well,
No.
we do pretty well already, but yes, yes.
And so it's sort of a comment / question. And I think might contribute to some of the data that you're seeing, because not all 100% of the skills are not incorporated into 100% of the curriculum.
That's right.
And so sometimes, like I know in the report, when a student has a number there, it means that there was an opportunity for them to demonstrate that. But there can be a semester where it's not available to them, and not all, right? So like certain skills are demonstrated at certain times in certain classes. So is part of, when you talk about the calibration and the integration into curriculum, is that part of what you're working towards, where they're all being measured by all the teachers all the time?
By somebody at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, we are working.
Okay.
So the project that the instructional leadership team has embarked upon, Dr. Fletcher's suggestion, direction, is to take an inventory and to try to not just look at where did we do it,
Yeah.
but where is there a natural fit between the processes that the kids are involved in every subject at every level, and where does that tie into a 21st century skill? So it might be that there are many opportunities for that connection that are not being taken advantage of. We want to find those, and we want to make that connection explicitly, and both for the teachers and for the students, so that they see where that is at all levels. And we're working all the way down to pre-K for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic presentation on every level. And to see the growth and the commitment that Ossabac School, Public Schools has toward reaching 21st century school skills, but incorporating the students' understanding of what they are. So my question, one, is I was looking at the slide that's improved communication of student data, and you were talking about our school.
Yes.
And so my sense is that you can go anywhere from 1 to 4. Is that the numbers mean?
That's right. And that's a big question. What do those numbers mean? On the district website, there's a tab under district. Header at the top of the screen, district, and then 21st century skills is there, and there are links to our 21st century skills rubrics. So, and I think, I hope. But if you look at that page, if you had one of the kids' report cards,
Yeah.
there's a link on it. I think Jeff even put a QR code on it, so it'll take you right to that web page. And and right there, top one.
Like,
And then you can look up, okay, what is a 2 in communication at in each grade band? And then you can look and hopefully take a look at 3 and say, okay, what's the difference? And where does my kid need to work to move from a 2 to a 3? And writing and revising those rubrics, as I said, was a major effort last summer. And I'm proud of where they are. I think they're way better than they have been.
And I was gonna say, especially leans toward having students really better understand their own strengths. To kind of look there, exactly what you had said, well, if it's that in science class, how did that show up there? You know, how did they get there? And that's some accountability, so they're like, oh, so that's something they can duplicate, you know, and maybe take cross-curricular. And be like, oh, if I could do that in science, then I guess maybe I could do that in history. And so it's that internalization of what they really mean. Because often we don't even know what they mean. I mean, adults don't even know what they mean sometimes. So that's an important aspect. I appreciate the commitment, the loyalty to the strategic plan, but taking it to a place in space so families are better equipped to ask the questions they need to ask. And students themselves probably would be encouraged to just don't take that at face value. I want you to look at it and tell me what you think of it, which might be an opportunity for them to be like, have you taken a look at it? What do you think?
Yeah, I like it when they argue with us too.
I
You
agree.
think that was a 2? That was a 3?
Right.
Taylor, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Mhm.
Those are wonderful conversations.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Asking you a follow-up question.
I think Jeremy will agree that your presentation is fantastic, right?
It is.
But did you see what we just saw next door? Did you see what we saw tonight? For me, that's the celebration of where this work is taking our kids. And that's what's, I think, gonna set them apart from, you know, their future colleagues or their future student body in colleges. You know, we have all this behind us, but then the proof is in the pudding. It was ties together so nicely what we saw tonight. It's rewarding.
Great feedback. Alan, yeah. Question?
Great comments, Heston. I felt the same way. So Jeremy, in terms of the data, so it sounds like what I was understanding is that there's going to be a better way to aggregate now because the data is going to be able to be compiled and aggregated. So there's going to be opportunities. Is that right?
Yeah, we could aggregate it and compile it before.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I think it's actually a little bit more difficult now, but I'm figuring out how to do it.
I'm sure you are.
And yeah, the sacrifice that we chose to make was like that, that's a little bit more arcane. is navigating that data and creating graphs. But we were willing to do that, to make that change, because it was so much more transparent to students and to parents. They could see where exactly their individual personal assessments came from. But on like a school-wide scale, it becomes more difficult to manage, but we're learning. And I think just that one graph that I showed you is enough for a 45-minute meeting, just trying to throw ideas at that, like, why is that? Can we form a hypothesis? Can we test it? So we're going to be able to continue to delve into that data.
Thank you. Just a curiosity about the dip, and then the next quarter, it went shot right up, like
Yep,
double-digit percentage increases.
yep. Neat.
Yeah.
I want to solve that. I really do. I really do. I don't know if it's worth anybody's time for me to stand here and just throw some hypotheses out, but after ILT kicked this around yesterday, the one that I liked the most was the nature of instruction changes, and a lot of those scores that in the dip came from January. And in January, everybody's staring down midterm exams. So it might be that there's some review, there's some like, or maybe there's like a lot of content crammed in, I don't know. But it's worth a discussion, because the kids they're not getting worse.
Is it that there's not
Critical
enough,
thinking.
was there an equitable amount of opportunity to demonstrate those skills?
That's a great question.
Right, I mean, that's part of what you need to look at.
You need a
Yes.
couple of years of data to be able to figure this out.
Right, yeah.
But we have the data to ask those questions now. And that's an exciting place to be, because we should be asking these questions and thinking about our instruction in terms of the outcomes that we're able to measure.
My question, because I had like a different hypothesis looking at that graph as well. Do we have the ability to understand, so in my mind, different 21st century skills are applicable depending on your level of mastery, right? So if you're less comfortable with a certain area, you want that person questioning and trying to figure out how to access the data, and they may not be as confident in communicating or presenting on that topic yet, right? So I'm also wondering, like, I was wondering, okay, maybe we're in Q1, let's review kind of what we're coming in from last year. You take a dip in Q2 because it's coming more complex, and then in Q3 they're gaining confidence and skill again. So I'm wondering, between like our systems-based skill mastery grading that we have and the overlap of the 21st century skills, if there's any way that we can currently marry those types of things.
That's a good question. I thought about that too, that perhaps there are parallel processes, that there are more than one skill being worked on at a time.
Right.
And when the difficulty of one rises, the processing ability for the second one might take a backseat.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Ellen, I think you had a question for.
I just wanted to say, the turning the capstone from a hurdle graduation to more of a stepping stone to post-graduation. I never really thought about it that way, and I think I just want to say, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy, going back to the data real quick, have you guys looked externally for any indications as to why our data might look? I'm assuming 21st century is not just central to Old Saybrook and other school systems, and there's probably volumes of scholarly research that have been done on it, and there may be something that pertains to, typically in the second quarter, we see a dip because something like that. I wasn't sure if you had shared or talked to other districts about your research, or maybe even look to journals online that might indicate how 21st century data is typically showing up in other school systems.
That's a great question. I'm not aware of other sources of data like this, similar to the challenge with using the capstone to substantiate student achievement. A challenge that we have with this is that it's not standardized district to district in a way that SAT scores are. That's really easy to chart and track. But 21st century skills are not assessed in the same way. They're not the data is not recorded in the same way. Heck, we aren't recording them the same way that we did last year, right? So I can't, it's difficult to even go year to year because the method of recording is different. So, so really all I have is discussions with people is what's on others districts' websites in terms of the tools that they're using. We had to build our own rubrics, which I think is an advantage for us in terms of this kids' understandings and their use in instruction, but nobody else uses our rubrics. Right, so those numbers are specific to Saybrook.
I also wonder if we haven't done so already, if we looked at other performance indicators for Q2, what we would say? Such as DNF list, you know, attendance, even involvement in athletics or extracurricular. What's going on, you know?
Mr. Yale did mention yesterday that he saw a similarity to Lexile performance, the same pattern.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's cyclical. Okay.
Final question.
It's a question, yeah. So question is that, you know, what are your goals? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 goals. Is that what teachers need to make sure they're implementing in their classrooms so that they can have a sense of how a student is performing in each of those areas?
No, you're referring to the rainbow slide with the 7 21st century skills.
Yeah, maybe incorrect.
That is the set of complete 21st century skills that we want the kids to develop as they move through our school system. Some of them are more natural fits for some academic areas and less so in others. And so our hope is to do a gap analysis on where the kids are encountering these skills so that there is a robust exposure over the course of their school experience. And we'll get there.
The only reason I asked was because curiosity and imagination sometimes is not necessarily infused, but it just is essential as proficiency.
Our visual art department is on that one. It's the best fit, but you know who else does that all the time and they really like talking about it is the math department. Our math department has been talking about that one a lot to high school this year, and it's really fun conversation to have.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
George, you had a question?
Yes, I do. Thanks very much. And so, Jeremy, Cham and everybody else, fantastic presentation. My question really relates to, I'm just in my mind trying to think of, there are at least 2 now, if not possibly 3 different assessment type or grading type environments, for lack of a better word, right? So you have this this environment where we are grading people on their 21st century skills, and we've been talking about doing an assessment based on mastery of standards in the curriculum, and that's been going on for quite a while. And I'm not sure how much overlap between those 2 there are. And of course, on the other end of the spectrum, there is the entire centuries old grading, ABC and so on, or scores from 90, 100 and so on. And somehow they all have to meld together, or perhaps not. And I'm just trying to figure out whether parents, students, teachers are able to meld all this together. Excuse me. It's just, and whether they're all sort of meshed together as well. After a while, it seems to be very complicated and trying to deconvolute all these different numbers. And also for colleges as well.
I don't want to put Mr. Walton on the spot, but I think the middle school is further down the road at this point of standards and mastery-based assessment and reporting of kids' report cards. And 21st century skills are slotting right into that as another skill which can be reported on by each teacher. So it's a natural fit for the way that the middle school is reporting student achievement. Is that accurate as well?
Yeah, I would say from a classroom instructional model, there's almost equal footing between skill, right, that's content-based, and the 21st century skills that are being taught across the 7 domains. So as you heard tonight, the kids made the presentation that you saw. They embedded the slide on 21st century skills because they said, well, these are the skills that are applicable to the types of learning with leadership that we've been doing. So yes, to your point, George, I think asked the question. Yeah, kids are using this language. They see the value in it. Mr. Carroll, in the 8th grade, have been reporting out for 4 years now on this data. And so a lot of those questions, a lot of those things that we saw with teaching students, I think, 4 years ago versus now, is that, again, there's more of a balance between 21st century learning and content skills. So equal footing, I guess I would say.
But does it influence their, I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand.
I also, you guys talk a lot about, how it's measured, where it's measured, when it's measured. I would say the one thing that we've learned the most is that environment plays probably the biggest impact as to performance, right? So if I were to look at every single 8th grade student, every single 8th grade student would probably be able to make a 3 and be proficient in any 7 of the domains, depending on what area you assess them in. So if you assess them in math or science versus gym versus whatever, the environment plays a huge impact over how they perform. So if you look at collecting more data, to your point, all right, so why did Q2 drop? Maybe that data wasn't collected in large amounts there or across content areas or in special classes. And I will be the biggest advocate to say that special classes is an area where these kids can perform the best and show the best mastery of these skills, which is kind of done a lot in our own building and educationally of bringing our specials classes up, right, with some more equal footing with the content skills. So yeah, I agree with all of that. It's hard to kind of like say which one's more important. You're kind of getting at that. I think we're doing more of this, right, where they're equally important.
I think that, like, to get to some of what I think George was alluding to is how do they integrate? Because right now, and I remember early on in this effort, it's the grading system that is used to assess, to rank students, and, colleges look at grades. Do these, if students do well in certain areas, because again, it's not every class measures in every area, and you can anticipate that they're going to be higher in certain areas than others. Does it influence their grading? Because right now they sit separately, right? As a parent, as a parent, I get both report cards, and one gives me, oh, here's a smattering of competencies that, but how does it interplay with the actual grading that they're held to, that they're measured against? You know what I mean? That's, I think, the challenge.
A goal that we've had was to, and excuse me if I'm going on for too long. A goal that we had was not to create another system of ranking the kids and sorting. That was not the goal.
Right.
The goal was to create a formative tool for goal setting, reflection, and improvement. So, George, to your question, very nice to see you. They are purposefully separate skills because the intention is different. We inherited the hundreds-year-old 20th century grading system, and assessing 21st century skills by a 20th century grading method seemed inappropriate. Yeah. And we wanted to set our own goals for this. So it is a separate stream. In terms of how we see our students performing ultimately, we would hope that, as Heston mentioned, what they're able to do is a result of the skills that they developed in 21st century arena. And that ultimately what they're able to achieve as their capstone, which is the most student-centered, most student-driven. They pick the whole thing. They decide what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it. That is the ultimate, and it's the capstone. It's the ultimate embodiment of student voice and choice. And that should be the arena in which their mastery of 21st century skills is most evident. And since there's no standardized system of assessment between schools, that achievement hopefully speaks for itself. But we can use our system of assessment as a scaffold for presenting it to the world.
Steve?
Curious, so low scores on the 21st century assessments have no effect on the student's ability to, are there any penalties, are there any drawbacks that we can't graduate, can't, no, so it's just another system.
It's information. It's information, and if there is a one that shows up, hopefully that's an indicator, like, hey, let's talk about this. Hey, let's work on this.
But it's not like they're on a sports team and, well, you got a 1, you can't play this semester.
None of that.
Okay. Sure.
I don't want this to be punitive. I don't want this to hold anybody back. What it is really is an answer forever to the question, when am I ever gonna use this? Because if we can tie it to a skill that is useful in the world, we have an answer to that question. It makes all the work that they do more authentic for me.
Any sense on how many schools require interviews, face-to-face or Zoom interviews as part of the application process? Because if that is part of applying, then the capstone experience and the story they can tell about their learning is of great advantage to any student applying to a secondary school, I would think.
Heck, yes. I don't have a figure off the top of my head. The admissions departments that I'm familiar with have moved to, because it's a large investment of time, only scheduling face-to-face interviews with students that they're on the fence about, or they want more information about their schedule after the initial period of consideration of application. I think that we would definitely see an advantage.
Right. I think the small private universities, based on my personal experience with my son, which is now about 10 years old, it was about over 50% of them did interviews, the larger schools now.
Or your essay that you write about is about your capstone experience.
Correct.
And that is part of almost every application, so that's a great advantage as well.
Yeah, some schools that there's, you used to require 2 essays. Now the second essay is optional and can be replaced with something else.
Okay.
Interesting. Jen, you have a question? Yeah, Jeremy, you bring up an interesting question. If a student should happen to get a 1, I'm assuming that would require more student-teacher interaction so that, you know, they can work on boosting that up and boosting their skills or inquisitiveness on that particular subject. Is that right?
I would hope that that would be a cheap reaction to any kind of program, whether it's 21st century skills or not.
Right, I'm just making sure that, you know, before, if you were getting a D, you might have to spend some time with the teacher to learn more about it. Or figure out what about this particular subject that you're not doing so well in, how can you get better at it? And it sounds like if you get a 1, that sort of triggers the same sort of responses. Whereby more help may be needed to
Well, you know
get the
what's
student over the hump.
when you read the rubric, a 1 generally describes what a good student would have been expected to do when I was in high school.
Right, I am agree.
And moving beyond that is a process of taking control of your own education, which you can't yell at somebody to do. You know, you have to convince them why that's to their advantage, why that's important, and give them an opportunity to do it. Okay. So yeah, a 1 is a challenge to all of us.
One last question.
I think it's a great conversation, and I'll just end it, is that often some of the conversations for this can happen in a home setting. So are parents educated as to this particular rubric so that they can be as interested and knowledgeable and benefit from the attributes that are not necessarily academic attributes?
That's a great question, and no, not yet, although I think it's a question. The 21st century skills were explained in the series of strategic plan community meetings. And I think we have some efforts going out in the works now to communicate out to families, what does achievement in 21st century skills look like? So that's in the works.
And it starts with the babies. I mean, it starts down below and can be carried all the way through.
And it's happening at all schools. We were doing it for 4 years. So the 8th grade sent home report cards related to all 7 of them for 4 years. 7th grade, 6th grade doing this year, and 5th grade do it next year. Keep working our way down and up.
You know, Jeremy, a sneak peek at a project that I've been working on with all of the schools, that we're gonna hopefully report out on May 9th. Coming soon.
Jeremy, thank you for the
Thank you so
presentation
much.
tonight. Thank you, for Dave, Matt, and Heston for your input and feedback. Very nice.
Okay.
Okay, so on Monday, we're gonna get back in a second.
Which just introduce it, which will give you the.
Yeah, so, the next item on our agenda tonight, is our policy first reading, and I do.
Yeah, we're just gonna say that we met, Jan is gonna, we just go through these particular policies. We had a robust discussion and you all had an opportunity to see these policies and the regulation, which you don't necessarily have to adopt, but take a look at it now because it's the opportunity, or ask your questions now because it's an opportunity to get feedback. And Jan will coherently go through things that, if you have any questions, or Jan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I invite anyone who was at the meeting, if they want to review anything or I've missed something, I invite you to step in. I'm gonna go through some of these pretty quickly because they're minor changes or they are technical changes. And our first one, retention of electronic records, is just that. It's a technical change and they're mostly just updating technology language and referring to things like that are more contemporary and modern. The next one, exertional heat illness awareness for intramural and interscholastic athletics, is basically just updating to match legislation. How we are supposed to train coaches to be aware of heat illness and what it looks like. We also have to talk to parents and athletes about what it looks like and how to recognize it in your child or in yourself as the athlete. We're already doing this. This is already in practice in the district. And this updates the language there. Reports of suspected abuse or neglect of children or reports of sexual assault of students by school employees. This came back because this was sent, just one, yes, this is the one that was sent back from the board. We were asked to look at our practices around reporting to DCF and or the police. And we did do that. I did a couple of things. I spoke with the board attorney, who said you always have to call DCF. Your policy says clearly that, there are times when you should be calling the police, and we do. I also looked at the nature of the DCF complaints that I always get copies of them. They've been filed in Kathy Bai's office. And some of them clearly need to also have a call to the police department. And some don't, some are about, educational neglect. You're not sending your child to school. And so we work more with our social workers and school psychologists and counselors in dealing with those problems. And I had a quick conversation with the chief, and this is a number of weeks ago now. And he agreed that not all these need to go to the police department. But I'll tell you that DCF sometimes will choose to notify the police when we think it wasn't a police notification. That doesn't mean the police do anything with it. It just means DCF, I'm not sure what their inner workings are, and if it's because they're busy or because they feel like the police can respond more quickly, but they will sometimes do that as well, and sometimes not. So, Steve, I know you might have had a question on that one, and this is one you had sent back.
This is one I had sent back and I will accept for now.
Okay. Series 5000, administration of medication, also one you've seen already, but at the end of the meeting where we approved this one, I was asked why we didn't include the Narcan or opioid antagonist language. And I think, Ellen, you were the one who had asked about that. And I was very deliberate in not using that language at the time because our nurses were still coding. And so now Karen Vanderhorst has gotten hold of the training and they're going to do that training soon. And we're going to put an effective date where we will store and utilize by trained staff opioid antagonists starting with the new school year.
It was optional language. I think when we reviewed it as a committee, we weren't ready to include it, but now that it's been, training is going to happen, it will be now implemented. You would see it highlighted as optional language, but now that we're going to be implementing it, it's no more optional.
Do you take your question first?
Yeah, so on my review of this one, the question I have, a couple of them. So if the nurses are gonna do it, the nurses union has been approached and they're okay with it?
Yes.
Okay, second, if you read through it, there has to be more than one individual.
Yeah.
And shall be on grounds. Have we identified who those additional parties are, and do we have enough that if it's only two people, you know, what if they're off-site? Just to make sure, I mean, if we accept this, shall be on grounds.
Yeah.
You know, we
So-
don't want to be putting ourselves in a bad
Absolutely.
situation.
So we're gonna start with the nurses and then we'll probably train administrators. So it's on grounds, it's school day only. So I think if we have at least two people to start off with in each building, we'll be in good shape and we can train, we're not required to train administrators, it can be any number of staff, but we'll probably start there. Starting with the nurses, moving on to the administrators, and then there may be some other staff will want to.
Right, that's great. And I, you know, just.
Yep, no, I saw that and that is in the plan.
Similar question that Steve was asking, in terms of the, that other person, the nurse designate, that couldn't include the, school resource officer, right?
School, yes, so thanks for bringing that up, and they do have, I think all but one are trained right now in Narcan, and I think the intent is for them all to be trained,
Again,
and they actually have it.
yeah, that's great. It was optional language, right? So we selected to option in. And I just want to say I commend everyone who will work under the nurses certainly for this. It's a huge problem, not in our school district, but the potential is there. So I commend folks for working through it. And it's going to take a lot of work on the proceeding part. So yeah, so I'll take them in advance.
Yeah, I will share that with them, thank you. Okay. Next one is education stability. This is just technical. There really is nothing significant in the policy itself. You can see the language changes basically, verb tenses and. The next one is management plan, for students with food allergies, glycogen storage disease, and or diabetes. And the nature of this one is that many more students, many more individuals with diabetes are using the continuous glucose monitoring devices. And so it used to be that when you needed to have your glucose checked, you would go down to the nurse's office and someone would prick your finger and we would check your glucose. Well, now it's all being done through technology. And so our nurses need to have a way to check in with certain students to see what their glucose level is reading. And we do have a way, it's an app on a phone.
I was gonna say that as a committee, we talked about it, we said very 21st century. You know, you can be able to do that remotely and be able to know that students really low in terms of sugar levels. How sophisticated is that? That's an advance in technology that many people know about.
The next one is the policy regarding students, section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 in Title II. Basically, OCR in July of 22, OCR, Office of Civil Rights, revised guidance regarding discipline in particular. I'll talk about that in the middle and next, but also they changed all the gender pronouns. This is Shetney Goodwin's work to make the policies more neutral. Everything has been changed from him and her. So on the piece on discipline, it basically just says that this is affording some protections to students with 504s that are similar to protections for students who have IEPs or special education students. And in particular, it calls out discipline, that the discipline that's meted out to a student with a 504 must be similar to discipline that would be meted out to any student, but it also needs to be contemplate the student's disability, or I don't think that's the word. What is the word for 504? Disability, thank you. So that, you know, for instance, you know, impulsivity with somebody with ADHD, are we certain that the student understood what was going on and what the act was that caused the problem? And so it's sort of expanding some of those protections.
I'm just gonna say, for those of you that are not, is Kathy here?
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay. I was just gonna clarify that, you know, when you have an IEP, then you have a diagnosed disability that goes and objectives to the 504. You have to add some kind of equipment that they might need, but it's not anything as specific as an individual education plan. But what Jan is saying is now they're taking a look at the disability and do you look at the discipline and is that an indication of disability? Or is it something that's independent of disability? And that's important to students.
So, student attendance truancy, this is another one that, cracks the law on student attendance. And so the only thing is we have the 2 new mental health wellness days. So students can take 2 days during the academic year for mental health and wellness. It's simply a phone call in from the parent. They cannot be 2 contiguous days. So this is Public Act 22-47. It also, but the policy changes really are only legal references, just to update that particular public act. If you're curious, the basic rule is first 9 days are excused with a written document from a parent. The 10th day and every day thereafter excused if you get a parent note plus 1 document that is from a doctor, physician assistant. There are other reasons why we accept students being out, court dates and that sort of thing. So we'll be adding that mental health and wellness.
And Jan, we also mentioned, I think, at the meeting, if a family was going to take a student, like say for a college interview, and they're going to be gone for several days, how that wouldn't be considered truant, because that would be a letter that would be sent to the administration, so they would know.
Well, the principal of a school can grant days for extraordinary educational purposes. So it would have to be done ahead of time. Yeah, that's also in the law. Use of private technology devices by.
What's that?
Yeah.
Sorry, when you say written note, is that also like a phone call, just like?
So technically, no, a phone call is not supposed to be, okay, neither is an email. Now, having said that, administrators all just went, what? Having said that, remember these laws are written for districts all over the state, and some of them have 5,000 students in them. Most of our secretaries know your parents, know their voices. We have the luxury of being able to accept different types of communication. The next one, use of private technology devices by students, is just technology updates. Again, that's what happens when you start naming specific technology. 3 years later, nobody's using it anymore. I'm sorry, Steve.
No, I just add a question in regards to this one. So,
Ask them through this one.
the use of private technology.
Okay, yep.
So there's a search section on it, where it discusses that, the search of the privately owned devices can be completed. And it doesn't limit to who can do it or in what conditions. I felt like that was a little broad. I'd like to see it more limited to, a teacher can refer it to administrators to have them review it so that there's some calming of mind, so you can look at it. Is it really something that needs to be searched versus, somebody having a bad day, like, give me that device right now. I need to look through it. I don't want to put our teachers in that situation where they're going through somebody's phone. One, my son shouldn't have his phone out, shouldn't be doing any of that. I agree. 2, somebody goes to snag something from my son. I would be very uncomfortable with that situation. So I just think it would be a great idea if a teacher feels or somebody in the school feels like that device needs to be searched. You know what? You need to go down to the office and I will refer you to them and have that search done at the office.
And in fact, that is the way it is. Teachers don't conduct any searches in our schools, and that's under a different policy, no searches. We could certainly add that searches are conducted by administrators.
If there's another policy, if we could reference that.
It's been a practice in certain instances where we will cross-reference another policy, so we'll say. Yes, in accordance with, I think it's a certain.
If we could just add those 2 together, that would clean up that loop, just, and
We can do that.
if there's confusion, there's always the opportunity for.
Yeah, and I think that is our practice in all of our schools,
Great.
And there's even limitations to the search of the phone too, by the administrator. You can't start scrolling 3 years ago,
Right.
but you can say, we have reason to believe that you were conducting some illegal business on your phone today, so I'm gonna go through your texts for the last few days.
Right.
That's an appropriate search. Our standard is lower than, of course, than for police. But we don't have teachers doing surgeries.
Just
Yeah.
that one
Taking
paragraph is very, very,
Yeah.
very vague, and,
Yeah,
so I'm glad to hear we have something else, like.
yeah.
So I would say,
I just wrote a note.
if we cross-reference it, then it's important that the members of the policy committee as well as the board take a look, because the cross-reference will give you specific information. Just make sure that you clarify on what they both mean.
Mhm. Wellness. Mr. Walton's here. Mr. Walton. Mr. Walton, the guy who works on this policy with a team of people every year. They actually walk through it and determine where we need to make amendments to keep it in line with the ever-changing laws, but also what are our best practices and what are we doing to make sure that our students are eating appropriately, exercising appropriately, have their mental health needs tended to. Anything you'd like
Yeah,
to?
just that we partnered with RUD, their big governing body, and it's nice to have somebody that has that background to review our policy, to make sure it's up to date, to make sure it's held to the highest regard. Julie works with me, as well as Maureen, to really review each step of that, and it's fairly complex. There's less and less on the educational side now than there used to be. It's more on the food service side, as Julie will attest to. So my role as an educator becomes less involved, so to speak, even though I do happen to chair that committee.
Just a question about the WellStat 3.0, whatever. Has that been used at this point, or is it going to be used?
It's been used. We had a triennial last year, and I think the
Oh, okay.
report came out last year. We were one of the higher in the entire state. I think we were up in like 86%, something to that effect. So really a high score.
And that data is posted on our food services page
Yeah.
as well, if you want to take a look at the report.
Great.
Yeah.
There's a potential that we're going to have to publish the nutrition counts for all of our meals if the legislation that's out on the floor goes through. And while I understand, I think it's a redundancy, because if you're following the federal guidelines, you're within the standards anyway, so, but it's coming, and that, of course, will probably end up getting documented in another version of the wellness policy. Next one is curricular exemptions, and a couple things happening here. Mostly it's just adding firearm safety programs as one of the now 5 topics that parents can exempt their children from. So this is probably happening for 2 reasons. I think there are probably more schools instituting firearms training. I know that the Ethan's Law out of the student who died in Guilford. I know that there is a curriculum that is being generated and shared there. So I think this is probably in response to that and people feeling uncomfortable with it. We are required to offer HIV/AIDS and family life education and sexual abuse and assault awareness. We are not required to offer firearm safety. We are not required to offer dissection. Okay, parent-teacher communications. They removed outdated language and they updated the citation. It's not significant. What's significant there is when we have to rework regulations, which I think we're probably due to rework. So something that we can work on this summer, along with our attendance letters, which we also said we're gonna work on this.
The date issue, we're like, no, we're no longer
Yeah,
have to stick with a certain date.
Yeah.
This is what we do all the time.
on or after January. 1st.
Keep one question, I was reading through that series, on page 3. I'm kind of confused, were there 2 different copies of that, or was it? The one I saw online was actually 3 page, had more than 3 pages.
Are you on the regulation
I was reading, the parent-teacher communications.
policy or reg?
Unfortunately, I left my computer at home, and I
Okay.
don't have it in front of me.
There's only one page.
But
It's
it
only
basically,
page.
Or 2, I'm sorry.
You see 2? Okay.
the one online, if you continue to scroll down, had more.
Oh, you're
Okay,
right.
so here's your policy. Policy,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And here's the regulation.
Yep, no, this is it.
Oh, and the regulation?
The district should
Yeah,
customize in this section.
Yeah.
So,
So that's what I was just alluding to, that we will probably need to update again this summer, because I'll bet that our current language is pretty antiquated. So we'll work on that, the regulation over the summer.
Will that? So that's a regulation, that
Yeah.
number one is a regulation,
Yeah,
should that regulation type, as a parent, they go to our policies, that's what we provide on
we
board.
provide both. We provide both the policy and the reg. Any forms associated with a policy.
Okay, so before we vote on that, will I have a copy of what would be a number one?
No, because you vote on policy, not regulation, and we'll need more time to do that.
So what I'm saying is that's not a complete policy, I can't review what's in that section if it's not attached. If that references a regulation, and I can't read the regulation as well as that policy,
Yeah,
then that's not a complete policy, I can't vote on that document.
okay, but we don't vote on regulation at the board.
Then it can't cite it, like, that's what I'm saying, is
I hear what you're saying.
if,
So,
Yeah,
it just shows the
Yeah.
implementation of it.
so.
yeah, it's gonna take us a while to put the regulation together on that.
Again, I'm not trying to be hard on these policies, but
No.
it's an incomplete policy and we can't vote on it. If there's not the corresponding document for us to be able to evaluate.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you, but I see your point.
Okay.
Because we use lots of different ways to communicate. We also have language in our teachers' contracts about teacher communication, so we have to put all of that together. Whereas the policy just says that we have to have procedures, we have to offer by law certain amounts of time for teachers and parents to get together conferencing. We have to also offer remote conferencing. And so those things are automatically, there's no point in even putting them in the regulation because we're required to do that. What we'll do in the regulation is talk about communicating with parents about positive news, communicating with parents about concerns. And so we'll really spell out the how-tos for staff in the regulation.
Yeah, and I think we've had this discussion before, the board is tasked with reviewing the regulations to ensure that they follow the policies. There is language on that, so I just, it's not really germane to tonight's event.
Yeah.
I feel like we can't, when it comes time to that, if there's language that says that this needs to be included, it doesn't say. The way I read that is that language should be in that policy. In the actual policy itself, and not just the district should customize here.
Steve, I have a suggestion. So if you come to the policy committee, we can address regulations. Let's do it there in a smaller venue.
Thanks, Simon. Do you have the next one scheduled?
No, you didn't come to the last one, so.
I had something,
Sure. Let me know next
at
time.
last minute.
Let
It's
me know
hard
next
to
time.
make, so if you let me know the next scheduled meeting, I can make it.
Totally.
I'm hoping this will be on policy now. for the rest of the
These are
year.
a lot.
It's just been, the last few years have just been brutal.
Lots and lots and lots.
And mostly they're just changing because of law.
Yeah.
Not all. And the last one is removal of board officers. It's just the removal of the repetitive language in the last paragraph. It's saying the same thing twice and it's unnecessary. And that's
So
it.
that doesn't change, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So that doesn't change the ability of the board to do this or that.
No, it does not. Now, the board still has the right with a majority vote to remove an officer.
Really, just some redundant language in there.
Yeah.
That's all of them.
Yeah.
For now,
Yeah, well done.
I make no promises.
Thank you. Okay, I know you're next, I'll let Janet.
Well, our building administrators with us, we're fine, we're done, thank you, good report. Our building administrators, with the help of their staff, have put together, as we do every year for the board, all of the end of year activities. And so those are for you to add to your calendar wherever you have interest, so please do so. And we'd love to see you there. Don't forget graduation. We'd love to see as many of you as can possibly be there on that wonderfully celebratory night.
And I know we'll go out to who will be able to be there. So
Yes,
that they-
yeah.
The room.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Question,
Go ahead, Jen.
real quick, and, if this is gonna be in your report, let me know, Trev. Heston, I'm sorry, Hoodoo Gathering, what's is there a special event, that's going to take place? And are we invited? April 28th, I see.
Yep, so that's this Friday, and that will be led by our kindergarten. So any of the Goodwin gatherings, the board and the administrative team is always welcome to attend. Yeah, Goodwin gatherings have been going on for many years, except for COVID.
Okay, thanks.
And I just went to the pre-K one, last month, which was, so the pre-K kids ran it. It was pretty awesome.
Okay, so, we'll look at reports by administration. Do we have any, questions, for, Goodwin School? All questions from the reports. Report members.
Feel like soft day.
Pardon?
Soft day, the kids love it.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun.
Just want to commend those students that presented today, Preston, they were awesome, and, you know, the things they've been working on.
Thank you.
Unique and, it shows leadership and collaboration and.
Yeah, I'll pass that on to their teachers and really prepare them well.
Sure did.
Thank you, Alan.
Hey, do you have any questions for, Matt, middle school? Yes, no questions? Do we have any questions, for the high school? Today. Right, Jim?
Yeah, Dave, I was really impressed about the civil engineering and architecture students that you have here. Is that a class or a club?
That's a class, that's part of our CPE department. The name of the course is Engineering and Architecture.
Okay, very useful, thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions, Dr. Fletcher tonight?
On the high quality instruction, so I know we've gone through high school already, and we're gonna be with our stakeholders. Is the plan for the feedback to come back to the board at some point, or how would we know kind of what the feedback is there?
No, absolutely. Once I have collected all of that data, I'll be able to share it in upcoming board report. The intentions of it is to collect it from the students as well as the parents, and then help bring that information to inform the work of DLT and ILT as they come together. And as we continue to work on the revision of high quality instruction with respect to the strategic plan.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for Julie for operations, facilities, and finance? See any questions? How about for student services? Alan?
I'm sorry, can I just back up to a question for Julie? In terms of the HVAC, grant or that we put in for, where do we stand with that? It has been awarded to some school districts, is that right?
Yes, it was, and Jan and I wrote a letter because we wanted more explanation as to why we didn't see our name on that list, and I think we got some answers the other day.
It was yesterday.
Yesterday, it seems like it was a long time ago. And they heard us and they realized that the application itself has some
Processing flaws?
yeah. that's a good way to put it.
That's very different.
So, there is another round in August and, if we don't hear from them before then, but I think the commissioner that we spoke with was very receptive. He, accepted the fact that there were some issues and, we'll get our money. We'll fight for it.
That's awesome. No, good work. Thank you.
And I have to say that the meeting went much better. We kind of got on there ready to have strong words, but they understood that there were errors in the process. And we felt that, as Julie said, we felt that if this opportunity is closed, that we will certainly have a second bite at the apple.
I mean, just specifically, one of the things is, you're supposed to submit a professional cost estimate. Well, we submitted actual cost estimates. And the commissioner was like, yeah, that should be.
And they checked that as deficient.
Yeah.
Deficient, yeah, because we had actual rather than estimate.
Yeah, so that's, that way.
And they also said the problem with our project is it was partly started, so it fell into one category, but not finished, so it couldn't fall into that category. They didn't know what to do with it. is
Yeah.
What they're saying, they
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with it, and so it fell into no man's land. And it was also processed by somebody who is no longer at the agency. So very frustrating to us, but again, have to commend the two folks that we spoke with yesterday because they sounded very concerned about how that was managed.
Excellent, great news.
Thank you, Alan Kransky.
Okay, any questions for the superintendent of schools?
We can go back to Kathy.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I just know you went when I was gonna. Congratulations on doing a unified sports or unified prom. Is that the first time we've done that?
Well, we did that in conjunction with our transition program, works with all the local ones, so that was a combined effort. Yeah.
Lovely. And I have a question for you. The English language learners that have now been accepted into the universal preschool, 4-year-old. Do you have any awareness of any play groups and helping some families and they needed to have that collegiality? And I didn't know if that's anything that we've been able to put together. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a big approach, you know, like, oh. But yeah.
Summer camps would be great for that.
I'm sorry, say yes.
Summer camps.
So maybe I'll find out from you.
Great
Yeah, that'd be
opportunity
great.
for them to socialize, right?
Maybe I'll connect.
Talk to Kathy about it.
Okay, there's a few families, 4-year-olds and they're like, I want a friend. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Dustin.
Just a comment, so Lauren presented tonight and I talked to her and her parents for a little bit and she pulled out the pictures from the photo booth. They had a photo booth at the prom and she was so proud of those pictures. I thought she said she had a really great time and pictures spoke to that.
Yeah, they were so excited to go. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Great, thank you. Any questions for our superintendent of schools?
If I could just add that we had the Middlesex Shoreline Superintendent's luncheon for student awardees yesterday at Water's Edge. Michelle Berner, really from our office, really puts together that whole event with Trent's assistance, and it was really great. We had we have 2 students from all of the Shoreline high schools, from North Branford over to Old Lyme, and then up into East Hampton and Portland, and we had Nicole Naletta as our guest speaker. She was very good, and kids were featured on the news this morning. That was very nice. Yeah, I would my add.
Question for Jane, just based on the report you were saying about artificial intelligence. Is that something that it's a mouthful? It's like, are we approaching it?
One of the platforms,
Right,
yeah.
like here and how we.
So, no, we're, you know, it's 4 months old, literally, 4 or 5 months old. So I went to an innovation conference and sat through a presentation on artificial intelligence, and the person from EdAdvance did he did one of those artificial presentations with someone you think you're looking at a particular person who's saying particular things, and it's not that person, and he's not saying those things, but it's his voice and his image. We also put in prompts and wrote entire, stories in 2 seconds. And then I stole that idea and I was the opening speaker for the RESC Innovation Conference at the Convention Center. And I started by doing an AI speech that I just plugged in the 4 pillars of the conference. And it gave me this speech on equity and culturally responsive. It was, and so I started the speech and I kind of used a therapy kind of voice because I wanted to demonstrate that it was not me. And the Saybrook staff at the table was all looking at me like, Laura Crowder said, she said to text to Jeremy saying, I think she's finally lost it. And then I paused and I said, I didn't write any of that. That's how scary it is. So I want this gentleman, I haven't talked about it with Bree yet, but I want this gentleman to come and talk to our staff because I think they need to know both the benefits and the significant concerns associated with this technology. I mean, you talk about fake news.
Yeah.
You'll never know, but you're talking to the person face to face.
That's right. How do you know?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that concludes our reports by administration, and I welcome our administrators to leave the lobby tonight.
Come on, get it.
Oh.
Enjoy your evening.
Yeah, well, get used to it.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you for everything, everybody. Thanks for being there. Nice job.
Yeah.
Keep on way out.
Okay, so we'll look at our next item on the agenda are the reports by board, committees and liaisons. So we'll start, Joe, with your budget, Phil.
Nothing to report. Thanks very much.
Remember, we have our town meeting Monday night. And the town has decided this year that they want to do the presentation. They feel like now it is the Board of Finance budget. Kind of understand that. And I think it's appropriate that they do the presentation. I will be flying in from Texas, but I should be here on time to be there. But everyone's welcome.
Yes. And then there's referendums a week later.
Yes.
Tuesday night.
Yeah, the eight.
Yes.
Or a week later, okay.
So Tuesday,
Monday, right, the eighth.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
The first.
No, that's the hearing.
Town meeting.
The referendum
The
is-
referendum is on the 9th, from 12 to 8 at the high school gym.
Right, so the town meeting.
as our meeting.
Mhm. Every year. Every year.
Okay, Kate,
It's just rocking and rolling. They're taking proposals for the November conference, which I submitted a student representation for today.
okay. Now, facilities.
So we have a meeting coming up on May 9th, and there's a litany of things to discuss. But I did want to say, there's an update on Monument Way, and Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think New Haven Register had a advertising for a bid to do the work at Monument Way, is that right? So it requires 3 bids, correct?
Well, if you can get Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always
So
a
that's good,
struggle.
it's moving forward, and that's good news. And the fence at the baseball field, it requires work on the maintenance staff and, I want to thank them in advance, it looks great, I bet you the baseball team loves it. The maintenance crew not so much, but, it's a nice addition and, thank you for that.
Had a group of baseball players approach me on Saturday at the high school to thank me, and I said I would share that with everybody.
That's great.
I'm not sure if this is a question for Alan or Jim, but how are we doing on our geese situation over in the baseball field this year?
We have dogs that come every day, twice a day.
Really?
Twice a day.
And we have geese who come when they don't.
And the geese, you have to stay on top of the pattern changes. It's definitely, like, my kids played soccer and baseball. They came home with it all over them most of the time.
Yeah.
It's definitely better. It's never gonna be perfect. We have the perfect storm, we have water, we have nice, green, beautiful grass. So it's never gonna be 100%, but it is a lot better than it once was.
Okay. How about Warren, Stephen?
Unfortunately, I couldn't attend. I had a conflict with work, so I have nothing to report on work.
I think there's 2 meetings left in their year.
That should be good.
Okay. Strategic planning.
Nothing at this time. You'll get an update with the end of year report.
Okay, demographics. Okay, first I hear that our personnel.
Yeah, I'm sure she would just want to remind you that advanced Q&A will be coming up, and then followed by the final evaluation meeting. So she'll be sending forms out if she hasn't done so already.
It's great. And can that be accessed remotely?
What
Evaluation. So that meeting, I'm not sure if I'm able to attend in person, so is that accessed remotely?
I believe our policy allows that.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Okay, I can check in with you.
yeah, I think it does.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, policy, I know you just the policy.
I think we're gonna take a hiatus from all, so Jane and I connect on anything else coming down the pipe.
I do not have a Jim report. Okay, so I am looking for a motion to go into, to invite our superintendent and Julie Pendleton into executive session. Second, all in favor? Right.
Sorry, I'm just, so Steve seconded, who made the other. Thank you very much.
We are now in executive session. For the purpose of looking at non-certified non-union contracts.
Very good.
We did like 2 minute break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're live.
Okay, it's 9:24, and we're now coming out of executive session. And I'm looking for a motion to direct the superintendent to offer 3-year contract to the occupational therapist based on the terms presented. So the second, all those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
That covers both OTs because they were the same
That's the
rate.
first one.
Okay, because we have 2 OTs and 1
Okay, cool.
CODA.
I'm looking for a motion to direct the superintendent to offer a 3-year contract to the physical therapist based on the terms presented. So moved. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
Third is a CODA.
Certified occupational therapist assistant next.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to direct the superintendent to offer a 3-year contract to the certified occupational therapist assistant or CODA based on the terms presented. Second. All those in favor?
If you've got this one.
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
Physical therapist.
No, he did physical therapy, he's doing second occupational therapy.
This is analyst.
This is an assistant.
I'm looking for a motion to direct the superintendent to offer a 3-year contract. Position of business analyst,
Business assistant.
business assistant. Based on the terms presented.
Stephen Kelly.
Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. And now I am looking, that's it for
That is it, because the occupational therapists are as presented.
For the 2.
Yes.
Okay, the next
Okay.
question you.
Okay,
That's the best.
before we adjourn tonight, reminders. As Jen mentioned before, next Monday night, May 1st, is the town meeting. Referendums on May 9th.
6:30.
6:30. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. In favor? Aye.